This is the hard truth. Well, a lot to talk about today. Heck of a lot of updates, interesting things going on, and I'm just going to whiz through it. Basically, the Queen's funeral, the Queen died, as we know, and she was ferried all around the countryside on some kind of tour. And then in the final funeral, I believe, we had all the heads of state attending, and strangely, Joe and Jill Biden were back in the 14th row, which is, I find, very odd. The supposed leader of the free world is in the 14th row, and we know location's everything, especially in these events. Prime Minister of Japan and people like this were the 6th row, I believe. Very, very strange. Interestingly, Trump always seemed to have good things to say about the Queen, and yet the Queen was the head of an establishment heavily linked into the deep state, as we know. Yet Trump, who's anti-deep state, anti-swamp, seemed to have high regard for her. Now, I've got a theory that quite possibly the Queen was the best of a bad bunch. Maybe she was a decent person in a bad environment, in a bad institution. Maybe she kept the wolf from the door. Certainly when we look at her family and we look at Andrew, who's cavorting on Epstein Island with underage girls, heavily linked to paedophiles, and we look at Prince Charles, again, friendship with Jimmy Savile, which is highly unusual. And let's not forget with Prince Charles, when he was married to Lady Di, she wrote a letter to her friend stating that she believed her husband wanted to kill her and she would probably have a car accident. And lo and behold, shortly afterwards, that's exactly what happened. Now, in any world, in any country, if that was the case with any normal individual, they would be hauled in for questioning and quite likely face charges. Of course, with the royal family, they're all exempt from prosecution, exempt from tax, exempt from everything. It's always been one rule for them and another rule for the common people. But anyway, other theory with Trump that he's always said, as I say, nice things about the Queen. Certainly, now we have Charles as the king, known paedophile's good friend. Wonderful. Great choice. Now we have Charles as a king, and Donald Trump certainly wasn't invited to the funeral of the Queen. In some ways, it makes it clear. It delineates the sides. Biden, Charles on one side, Trump on the other side. So the scenario that existed before, or there's talk that there was an arrangement made between Trump and the Queen that certain things would not be initiated till after her death. Who knows? It'll be interesting to watch now. Interesting to watch, because we know Charles is an advocate of Klaus Schwab and the Green New Deal and takes his orders from Jacob Rothschild. We know this. We know this. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. Is the deep state's last bastion the UK? Again, we'll have to wait and see. But some very, very interesting times, I think, ahead of us. And certainly with Trump recently, there's been a more overt message from his rallies, certainly his recent rally in Ohio, where he played the QAnon music over his last speech. There was a recent leaflet or meme that came out that from Trump that said the storm is here, and where we go one we go all and everything. And it seems now that Trump is aligning himself quite firmly with the QAnon message. Now, for those of you that don't know, QAnon is said to be almost a coded message to the good people of this world of what's going to be happening, what's going to be transpiring. There's a lot of numerology in it and a lot of references back to previous posts, etc., etc. I looked into this for some time and it's fairly complex. What I can say is there's certainly nothing bad about the QAnon movement. It's all wants good for people and for humanity and the end of child trafficking and things like this. It's certainly a good thing. Now, whether or not it's allied with Trump was always the conundrum. I believe now it's quite clear it is. And there was talk that Q Plus in the QAnon forums was Trump himself. Very early on in the QAnon movement, a person asked, well, if Trump is allied with this and this is all genuine, can we give a statement or can we say something here that Trump will repeat? And the word was tippity top. In his next address outside the White House, he turned around and mentioned that him and Melania were feeling tippity top. And he said it twice as per the instruction. He was asked to say this word twice, and he did. So quite clearly, there to me was a link. But whether Trump is just embracing the movement as a positive thing to support him or he is indeed involved is another thing. There was certainly a photograph posted from Air Force One. So it had to be. The QAnon person involved had to be an insider in Trump's circle at the very least. Personally, I think now, knowing what I know, that the QAnon movement is a vehicle for, as I say, messaging the people, letting the people know what could be happening, what could be coming. And I do believe Trump is the initiator of that. As he used to give messages on Twitter, he gives his messages on QAnon. So, I firmly believe that's the case. I firmly believe that's the case. But again, very interesting times. A lot of things not being reported. Rand Paul, Senator Rand Paul, is currently absolutely hammering Anthony Fauci with relation to the COVID situation. So that's still ongoing. And I believe Anthony Fauci is certainly, or should be, tried for crimes against humanity. 100%. The lies he told, the manipulation, his involvement with the Wuhan lab, with the gain of function research there, This guy is heavily implicated, and fantastic that Rand Paul is taking up the baton and ensuring that he gets brought to justice. What, of course, as well is happening at the moment that, again, not being reported on the inverted commas mainstream media, is the weaponising by the Democrats of the FBI and by the deep state, obviously, to use the FBI against political enemies. This is very akin to what it was like in the early Nazi days. And the FBI have seized Mike Lindell, who was a supporter of Trump's, phone, took his phone, and there's a lot of Trump allies being raided. Clearly the FBI are looking for something, and quite probably looking for information as to what Trump's going to do next. Trump clearly wants to take down the deep state. They clearly don't want him to. So they're going to do everything they can to stop him. They're going to try and find something. They're going to try and come up with something. Because at the moment, Trump's probably got 85% at least of the support in the US. A huge army of supporters, and the minority is ruling by default, essentially. And my belief is that Trump is still president. I think under devolution, he's still president. He's still commander-in-chief of the armed forces, the US armed forces. And there is a massive sting operation in progress to flush out all the deep state, to flush out all the bad guys who have been manipulating for their own ends the future of humanity for at least 100 years, probably thousands of years. So some truthers think that this is all optics, that this is all a movie unfolding in front of us to let us see the injustice, to let us see the corruption of the FBI, to let us see the corruption of the Supreme Court. And there's merit to that. There is merit to that because Trump seems to be protected. And let's be honest here. When they wanted to take Kennedy out, they took him out pretty quick. Okay? You know, and yet Trump seems untouched or untouchable. Now there's only one reason I can see that would be the case. And that's if it's already over and done with. And we are not in real time. We are probably, what we're seeing and being told, maybe a month at least behind the reality, maybe 6 months. Who knows? Maybe a lot of this has been done and dusted. Biden is an actor, a stool pigeon, somebody put in position to allow people to wake up, to see the difference, to see how good it was, to see how bad it is. It's almost like an expose of the socialist doctrine is what we're currently seeing. Everybody is seeing this. You know, even the most anti-Trump people are seeing that something's not right. Something isn't right here. You know, if we go right back to when Biden was supposedly inaugurated, when the car drove away from the inauguration proceedings, hundreds of soldiers, US soldiers lying in the street, turned their backs. As if to say, he's not our president. Now, they would do that in the military if the person that they were supposed to pay respect to wasn't the person that they truly reported to. Strange things have been happening in Washington. Fences being put up and going around the White House, and there's been information and evidence that a lot of Biden's broadcasts have been from Carver City Studios, from a set made up to resemble the White House. It's very odd. The whole thing is very odd. And Trump is basically annihilating them all. But you clearly have a delineation. The people are being able to see a comparison here. We're being able to see the fair media, people like Newsmax and Fox in some elements, but we're also being able to see the clearly biased deep state media, CNN, MSNBC, CBS, who are just so over the top in their hatred of Trump that it can in no way be viewed as impartial. And this is obvious. You know, I've never seen it in my 60 odd years. I've never seen such a huge hatred towards a president that I saw with Trump. And that in itself is enough to alert me to one thing and one thing alone. That here is a guy they fear. Here is a guy that isn't going to play ball. That isn't going to be another puppet. He isn't going to be an Obama. He isn't going to be a Jimmy Carter. He's not going to be a Biden. Here's a guy, self-made businessman, doesn't need the money, wants to make the country, his country, the United States of America, and by default the world, a better place. That's what's rocking his boat. Now, to make the world a better place, you have to get rid of all these characters. The Rothschilds and the Zuckerbergs and all these evil people, these puppets, you know, and expose all the lies. And don't forget, if the mass media was truly controlled by the deep state, you wouldn't see a counter argument. You wouldn't see anything positive about Trump. You'd see nothing. But we're seeing lots of different things that are red pilling the people. Lots of different videos are going up and showing the unfairness, the corruption. They'd all be stopped. They'd all be slammed out if the deep state was still in control now. So I believe they are not. I believe there's as I say, a big sting operation going on here to red pill the people, and certain characters that have already been dealt with have been kept in position, are being told what to say, are doing what they're told. You know, you got a situation where I remember when Trump was at some speech with the armed forces, and it was very, very icy and very, very sort of slippery. And someone helped him down the steps, basically. And afterwards, the following day, all the corrupt media, the fake news, they're all saying, oh, he can't walk on his own, and he's impaired, and he's this and he's that, which was obviously rubbish. Yeah, it was just slippery. Now, it's kind of like karma. And then you get a video that goes on the mainstream that shows Biden walking up the steps of the airplane and falling over. And it's like a comedy. He falls over 3 times. Now, you can't put videos up about the president and things like that without permission. So how has this managed to get out? How has it even got up there in the first place? And isn't this a coincidence that they criticise Trump for nearly falling over and then Biden falls over And there's an awful lot of things like this happening. And you've got to look for the little messages, the hidden messages. It's very interesting with the US flag that Trump has at his rallies. It's a different flag. It's completely different. And some might argue that this is the real flag. Or is there a coded message in this flag? I'm not trying to overthink this. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, never have been. I look at the facts. And if it makes sense, well, it's likely true. Because there are no coincidences in life. Everything's orchestrated. Everything's by design. So it certainly points to the fact that there is something going on that we don't really understand, a very high level, involved chess game, but it's almost an information war. And it's so convoluted that it's keeping the public interested. Something terrible's happened to Trump. Mar-a-Lago's been raided and then they take things and then they come up with a false claim against him and he gets out of it. But what does it do? It highlights the weaponizing of the FBI by the deep state. It shows the people the FBI are tainted. This is what this exercise shows us. And let's be fair, anyone that would have come out a year ago or 2 years ago and said, right, let me just tell you something. We're being controlled by a privileged few known as the deep state, and they're all for money and they're all for socialism. They're all for turning us into slaves. They don't care about us. They've orchestrated assassinations and false flag events to further their agenda, and the FBI are corrupt and he's corrupt and she's corrupt. Nobody would have believed this. Oh, you're just a conspiracy theory nut. So how do you get over that? How do you get over that conspiracy theory label? Precisely how things are happening now. Because people can't call it a conspiracy theory if it happens. And it's seen to happen. And this is what I think is happening. This is to wake the people up. The COVID agenda suddenly stopped in its tracks. We knew they wanted to lock us down for 5 years. But it stopped. Bang, ended. Masks, ended. All of it, ended. When there didn't look like any abatement. Why? Who stopped it? We know the governments didn't. We know certain governments didn't want to. So have a lot of the bad guys in these top level positions, and bear in mind they've had hundreds of years to build into this position. Have they been deposed, pushed out, told what to do? No, you're not doing that anymore. Stop. I believe so. I believe things are looking very positive now. And I think, and I would certainly say to everybody, watch very intently now what's happening. Because I believe from now till December, you're going to see an awful lot transpire. And maybe it is a movie. Thank you.